Hello, I'm Glenn W. Hunter, and welcome to the 3 Cs of SEL. To my left is Shor, Denny, CEO of Community Now, an SEL organization in the Inland Empire in California, and I am the board chair of Touchstone Youth Resources Services, an SEL organization based out of Nashville. Today we're going to talk about community trauma, part 2 from last week's episode.
Yes.
So when we think about community trauma, the issue at work is what is going on with individuals that starts to manifest itself throughout the community. What is happening with our young people specifically? And I think we have some pretty interesting insight with regards to what can go wrong with our young people and their behaviors that really reflects what's wrong with the community at large. Shor, what would you like to add in your backyard with regards to some of those challenges?
Well, since we're talking about community trauma, we have had some trauma in our community this week. We had an unfortunate incident with some youth. Youth was harmed, and our community is outraged right now. So I think that this would be a great time to start talking about maybe how we deal with trauma in our backyard.
So literally, when you have something in your backyard and you're trying to find answers, I think the first question is literally, who are the adults in the room in a situation like this?
Well, a lot of times I kind of think the adults are the problem. But when we're talking about the youth, if you're going to talk about the youth and the situations that our youth get themselves into at school, then there is no adult, right? We're talking about our youth and what they're doing in school. When we're talking about how we as adults react to what's going on in schools is where you're going to get into, where is the adult? In our community, we had an issue, and unfortunately a child got harmed. And the parents are outraged, and they have approached the school, and there are sues. People are saying, I want to sue you, personally sue people. And it comes down to, what do we as a community do? What are our actions and what actually helps?
It's funny you say, what are our actions? Because I think what we're seeing in our community with this issue is a lot of reaction. When you say it's all of our faults, who ultimately has responsibility for correcting this thing?
All of us. Now, the school, of course, has a liability. They have a responsibility, but who is responsible for raising our children is what it comes down to. And I would have to go back to, it takes a village, because what we're seeing right now is that it took a village to cause this harm. We're seeing, our youth are seeing disdain. They're seeing people yelling and arguing. And the school ground parking lot in the morning and after school is a great example of the parents being very aggressive, not being kind, pushing what they want before the others. And then they wonder why when they leave and the kids are in school, they're doing those same actions that they saw the parent do. So what we really need to do is check ourselves, and we need to look at how are we showing our children how to interact. With this unfortunate situation, when you're coming, we had a town hall, and when the parents came to the town hall, they yelled, they screamed, and there was really no opportunity for listening, and there was not anyone in that room, if you want to say the adult, that had any organized solutions. So the parents, when you talk about harm and when you talk about trauma, and we're talking about community stress, so when you are stressed, the first thing that's going to happen is that there is going to be a lack of oxygen going to your brain. Your brain is going to start having bits of confusion. You're going to, through stress, your body goes into anxiety. It's going to go into the fight or flight mode. And our parents are in the fight mode right now. But the problem with that is that it doesn't give them a chance to step back, breathe, assess the situation, and come up with solutions. Instead, unfortunately, they come there looking for a solution to be given to them. So I would say with the school district, they have a responsibility to bring services to that campus that can help improve the climate of the campus. not just bring behavioral specialists to talk to one kid here and one kid here when the issues there are systematic. the issues there. We're talking about a lot of children that have been harmed. So we're talking about a trauma, a school full of trauma that is perpetuating trauma. And you can't heal that with trauma, right? We're not going to heal that yelling at each other, screaming at each other. The only way we're going to heal any community in our nation when this happens is by our community members coming together, looking for solutions, which means breathing, which means trying to think of what in our community can we use to support our families, support our youth, and support our schools. Because our school, I don't know when people started thinking that the school did everything. They're supposed to raise our kids. They're supposed to, now they feed our kids. I mean, what do we as parents, what is our responsibility these days? And if it's not to teach our children how to interact positively within society, I really don't know what it is.
So what I'm hearing you say then is, as you're looking at this particular situation, really from a top-down view, there's an enormous number of stressors literally bombarding that entire community, teachers, parents, and students. So when you start seeing those kind of stressors, what tools come to your mind in order to start communicating healing?
It would be, number one, kindness. I always go back to, it's the quickest way to get a result is to be kind. But in this, they need people in there to teach coping skills. They need coping skills taught to the teachers, coping skills taught to the students, so that they can come to a common ground. Everybody needs to know that this is where we are right now, but how do we move from there? A lot of times they're looking at how can we back up? How can we back out of this and it never happened? That's not going to be the case. The case is that we have foster youth on our campuses. We have youth that are in homes that are in struggle right now. We have youth that don't know if they're going to eat dinner tomorrow, or if they're going to have food over the weekend, or if they have clothes. And we have people with some very big needs on our campuses, and they are already stressed. So when you just continue to add stressors, and then as last week we talked about the community stress of these shootings off in other places, these things also impact our youth. And our youth are now going through gun drills in school, So when you see that there is a lack of safety in the whole community, we all of us feel unsafe. The key would be to bring safety mechanisms into the community, which would be bringing people into, again, start building coping and start making processes where our youth are able to release what it is that's inside of them and find ways of expressing it that aren't negative. And again, that comes to the parent not being negative, right? That comes to the parent not in their challenges blowing up or cussing someone out or fighting, or it means that when they are looking at their parents coping in the day-to-day situations, they are actually learning coping skills that are positive and that they can use while they're in school.
One of the things that I appreciate you pointing out earlier is, while we're experiencing this here in the Inland Empire, that this is a national issue that we're wrestling with.
Yes, it is.
And one of the benefits of our particular program is that we have exposure to two different markets, one in the Mid-South, one on the West Coast, where you're seeing this commonality.
Yes.
So what we're literally dealing with now from a responsibility standpoint, who's really responsible for this, what we're seeing is literally a national problem, a cultural problem that continues to expand. And at some point, we have to find that common thread and communicate it. So in terms of communicating that common thread, how do we get best practices out into the national fabric?
They start looking for them, right? Our school districts need to be bringing prevention programming into the schools, because again, intervention doesn't work. I mean, let me reframe that. Intervention has a purpose, but this isn't it. The purpose that we need right now, what we need is prevention. We need kindness. We need positivity. We need showing our children ways to cope with the stressors that they have in their day, and what the stressors that are coming from their family, and the stressors that are coming from their school, and as far as school work, and from their peers, right? So they're getting bombarded from all different ways with all of these stressors, and they're acting out because they see nationally that we as adults the way that we're dealing with our stress is we're suing people, we're hitting people, we're lying, and we're screaming, and they are simply emulating what they see around them.
Wow. So from a solutions perspective, what are some of the proper resources that need to be available as we start to wrestle this very large animal right now?
Systematic change from the state, at the minimum the county level, where they are putting programming. Our counties are issuing programming that's not just mental illness based, but is prevention based, so that we get systematically programming out here that is helping day-to-day people with their challenges. Talking with your county to talk about a warm line. I think we talked about this. Now, there's a hotline for suicide and things like that, but this warm line, when people can go and talk about, you know, I've got this issue right now. The families could be calling and saying, hey, there was a child harmed, really harmed at this school, and I'm afraid for my children, and I'm afraid for, and start finding coping mechanisms, join hands with positive people so that we can build coalitions where we can work on how our community reacts to stress. But mainly teaching each individual the power that they have over their mental wellness, and that we are not subject to just what happens to us. As a human being, we are not reactionary. We do have mechanisms where we can cope with the harm, where we can put different mechanisms in place to reduce stress. These are all things that are within our boundaries, within things that we can do, and we should be teaching that at a systematic level. That we have schools where community now is working, that we have seen with our principals, that with a combination of programming, but with that prevention implemented, that negativity has been reduced by 80%. Expulsions, suspensions are going down drastically because the atmosphere is being changed. The way that the children are being looked at and dealt with is being more trauma informed. So they're talking more in alliance with our youth instead of just directive at our youth, you know. So there are a lot of things that we can do within the prevention realm. The key would be building systematically that prevention, just as they're trying to build the intervention. And you've got a navigation system for intervention, have a navigation system for prevention.
And I think that sums it up right there. You know, and it ties perfectly in with the 3 C's. I mean, we're going to have communication. We have to have coaching to improve behaviors. And we have to have community. You know, that sense of sharing, that sense of kindness, as you say. So I think when you tie it up with that final bow of prevention, right? Intervention is a part, prevention is the solution. We have to make sure we're communicating that literally across the nation.
Exactly.
So with that theme in mind, I would encourage you to share some of the thoughts that Shor brought to your attention, not just what happened here in the Inland Empire, but the impact that it has in a broader sense, because these are some of the tools that will make our communities better, stronger, and most importantly, make our children more functional.
Yes, yes.
Once again, Glenn W. Hunter, subject matter expert, Shor Denny. And again, we'd like to encourage you to share our podcast, share the words of wisdom that we're getting from the front line, and most importantly, remember to be kind.
Be kind.
Thank you very much.